translations. We've already covered the swings, but I'll go through it one more time kind of quickly. We always want to check the equipment when we start and make sure the swing's about 2.5 to 3 feet apart. So yours can come a little bit wider. So yeah, I do this. So I'm just going to kick it over like that. And, you know, they move around in here. Sometimes there's not that option. But we want to make sure the swing is about 2.5 to 3 feet apart. We check the equipment thoroughly first. So we can see we have ropes extending, and then we have the daisy chains hanging down from there. So we just give it a little tug, make sure everything feels nice and solid, right? We have the carabiners allowing us to adjust the height of the swing. We have the 2 handholds, and then we also have the leg loops. So one leg loop on each side attached with its own carabiners. Yeah, so we want to make sure everything's the same level and the same height, but once we get in the swing, we'll find out pretty quickly if it's in a good position for us. So let's go ahead and just sit straight down. Let's come into our sumo squat. Swing is going to be behind the heart. So if it rides up too high, you'll notice because the hands turn into like scarecrows. Yeah. And we always want to make sure that we have a nice engagement through the upper body. So we're going to just keep it low. If we have a bra on, below the bra strap. And then the arms are going to anchor, are going to hook. Okay, I always like to make sure my mat is centered, so I'm just going to slide that over and get it all lined up to begin. Great. Very nice. And then the feet are pointing out about 45 degrees. So in sumo squat, we have the hook here. We have our hips sinking down, so yes. So that's going to be a really good place for you to focus the hip flexors. And just notice when the hips are dropped, we have more length in the back body. So we want the spine, the traction out of the pelvis. So you'll hear me talk about that in several different ways of how we can get more space in between the vertebrae, and that's the therapeutic version. So walk your feet forward a little bit more so there's a right angle with your knees. Yeah, perfect. So that's sumo. Lots of little details to get into it. We can always bring the swing up higher or lower. Okay, so I'm actually going to, let's see. Because we have things hanging down that are a little bit different, but I'm going to bring the one side up for you. Okay, so I'm just going to bring your left side up one, and that'll be good for today. See how they're just slightly different from one another? Yeah. And sometimes when we're hanging outside and playing in trees, we'll just have to kind of adjust and work with it. But because you were a little bit low, let's see how that goes for you. Let's just try. Okay. And if it still feels low, we can bring the other side up too. So sit straight down. There we go. That looks good. How does that feel? Good? Yes. Awesome. Great. And then, so we just play with the alignment until we get it just right. This one here. That'll be close. Okay, great. So, next thing we want to do when we get into sumo squat is test out our leg loops, right? So, always keep the arms wrapped around the swing. We're going to learn the hooks and the anchors. So we're hooking under the arms, and that makes us, drop the hips, right? That makes sure that we're always going to be supported by at least one part of the fabric. So when we hug around the swing, grab with both hands. So grab at the bottom so you can really use your belly, use your core to get the leg loop behind the knee. Awesome. Great. So now, second side, we grab with both hands. It's going to be exhausting how much detail I give you, but it's good to learn it this way. And then you can kind of improvise and go more quickly. Great. So we want to make sure that the leg loops don't go higher than the knees. So this is pretty much as high as we want them. And they feel pretty close to even, right? Yes. Maybe a little bit. So when we work with all the idiosyncrasies of life, even though these are perfectly the same lengths, we'll find that we might need to adjust one up or down, just the knee, the ceiling, and all that does. Okay, good.
You don't want the leg loops higher than the knees?
No, you don't, I'm sorry, you don't want the knees higher than the chest.
Okay.
So that's as high as the leg loops would get.
Okay.
Thank you for correcting. Yeah, so we can actually, I know, you're like, what? So, yeah, feel free to ask questions if it doesn't make any sense. Like, wait a second, what do we do with our knees? So yeah, so this was chillaxin pose, which we practiced yesterday. So this is familiar.
With the hands behind the head. So like
yeah, so the full chillaxin zone pose is clasping the hands, letting the elbows flare out wide, and swaying from side to side. So in this pose, you're going to have to learn how to keep the hips really heavy. So drop the hips a lot, and then let the upper thoracics create the back bend. So most people are arching at their lower back, and the lumbar, even though it curves in that direction, it doesn't have much space. And so we wind up crunching the back end of the vertebrae, right? And so what we want to do is let the lower back be completely relaxed and let the upper thoracics initiate the back bend. Okay. Yeah, so that's why we keep the sacrum heavy, hip flexors deep, right? And then we let our heart open from there. Much better. Can you feel the difference?
Yes.
And it should feel really good on your upper back, like your upper back might feel a little bit achy behind the heart because it's actually been craving that curvature.
Yeah, it's definitely a different, like, it feels like there's some pressure on it. But
Yes. So that should actually feel good once it starts to loosen up, right? So let's come back to our sumo squat and go through the sequencing. We just wanted to test the leg loop to make sure everything was A-okay. Like I said, we could both bring the swing up a little bit higher, but we're going to work low today. If it's up higher, it tends to be a little bit more uncomfortable under the arms.
Okay.
And so just to kind of run down the options when people complain about their arms falling asleep, says you'll give them, don't push your hips up though, that's not an option. Knees stay out, right? So we're always having this opening. And so your hip flexors might feel the depth that we're dropping into too, right? So we're going to push back with straight legs and then lift the hips, yeah. And then we can shake out the hands into Jazz hands, right? Okay, great. When we sit back down, we can use a forearm press to hold the swing there. Now drop the hips completely, good. Yeah, knees stay out. So heels in, yeah, heels out, there, that's good. So that's just the sumo squat. I know, the little idiosyncrasies in the hips. And then we're just going to shift from side to side. So we're going to get into number one, which is squats, lunges, and back bends. Okay, there's so many different variations. I just did really simple shorthand with the circles, right? When we go side to side, we're going to do circles. And then we can go from side to side right into a lunge too. So we open it up, which we went over yesterday. So walk your feet forward just a little bit more so you have the space. Perfect. There you go. So since we're hanging our weight completely, we're allowing the knee to go past the toes, which we normally wouldn't do in a lunge in a yoga class, just to keep the knees nice and happy and safe. But since we're supporting ourselves fully, we can do that. And then from our wide straddle, we can come again into a supported back bend, shake out the hands, come into the forearm press. Good. So forearm press is optional, right? This is what we can also do to learn how to engage the lats. So let's go over the shoulders a little bit and how I start to retrain people. So we are going to let the shoulders right up to the ears. I know it's unusual, but yeah, there you go. The face you make is great. And then we pull down. Pull down strongly. Yeah. Now make sure you're doing it evenly because one shoulder's higher than the other, so pull your left down even more. There you go. Now it's even. Good. Hips are heavy the whole time, and you're going to want to press there. Okay, good. So that's how we teach people where their lats are. Okay. So we do little shoulder shrugs to begin, which is going to be intense for them. Yeah. So not too long. So we keep them smiling. If they stop smiling, then we know we take a break, right? So shake out the hands, shake out the arms. Come into chillaxing arms too. And we're just going to flow, right? So even though we're going over the sequencing, we did this yesterday too, where we can come into a version of the side bend, the side tree, and weeping willow. So in this pose, we're bringing our elbow to a bent knee. So let your knee kind of flare out to the side a little bit more. Yeah, we don't want the knees to collapse in. And then switch sides. So one leg straightens, good. And it should feel really good. We press straight back. So we're doing our semicircles. And then we're coming into a side bend stretch. Nice. Does that feel great? Yeah. So good.
That's super tight.
Yeah. So you'll really feel the difference. Just even after a couple days, there'll be so much space that happens as the connective tissue starts to loosen up. So that is the key. So just this simple rocking, bending movement is what is good. That's what's going to open up the fascia. And it's so easy and simple. Sometimes we overlook the the most simplistic way of opening up the body is effortless, right? And we're so used to efforting. But when we effort, we actually contract, and then the contraction stops the expansion from happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the more that we're allowing ourselves to experience the expansion, then the deeper we go, actually. Okay? So I want to play with the circles a little bit more. So again, this is just total fun time, playtime. Make sure the swing is behind the heart. So I can either keep my hands on the swing, always keep the elbows bent so you have the hook, right? So some people will straighten their arms and fall out. So I always keep the arms bent. Or let's hold on to our leg loops, right? So we're going to start doing our semicircles a little bit bigger now. So let's synchronize swim. Good. Nice. And we're going to come about halfway. So our feet become the pivot point. So we're constantly engaging through the toes to keep that anchoring down. Yeah, and then we're kind of rolling on to the outer edge then of the foot, right? Nice. And these are kind of like our little anchors. I know you're not going to go anywhere. You're like, what? Just make sure that the equipment is happy. But now we're going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's try it. So we're going to come all the way forward and then all the way back to the other side, right? Yeah. So this is how we can do like our roundabouts, I call them. All right, and now we're going to get a little bit more momentum and come all the way around. We hug in the middle. There you go. So this is how we can get really playful, especially like, of course we can do this with adults. So I'm going to pause and go the other way. You can kind of change direction when you're ready. But this is how we can really start to, like I said, open up that relationship to our courageous inner child that wants to come out and play. So we just let ourselves experience that full roundabout. Really good. Nice. And then come back through center. So it was kind of like our angel wings when we did it yesterday, how fun and playful that was. I'm actually going to come the same direction as you so we can practice angel wings. It just works out a little bit better to both do it in this direction. We'll release our leg loops. And you can, do these in any particular order. I'm just flowing with it, like I said. But we're practicing our circles and our lunges and our twists and our side to side. So first I call this eagle wings, right? So just wings in general. Pick a pair, whichever ones you like, right? And then from here we start to bend the knees, right? So arms come up overhead, and then when we bend the knees, we can come forward, press the hips forward. So really strong shoulders, thumbs pointing up. Then bend the knees, let yourself swing back, and then overhead. Take an inhale here, exhale, bend the knees, swim it forward. And then exhale, come back again. All the way up. Good. Exhale, come forward. Inhale here. Exhale back. Okay, so from this position, let's get into our weeping willow one more time. We can do this with straight arms. With straight arms, I like to interlace the fingers. If we're opening up the side body, this would be more advanced. And then the relaxed version is holding the head, letting out the elbows. So now we're doing straight legs, feet together, pushing strongly into the ground so we can open up from side to side. Really good. We're going to come back down. Let's just use our forearm press to revisit our sumo squat. Okay. Well, from our sumo squat, let's do a little bit more twisting from side to side. Okay? So that now we're letting the knee drop. We're going to do the same side, so left knee comes down. It's almost like we're coming into a side lunge, but we're still holding our weight, and then coming back up. So this twisting, rotating motion in the hip joint is really good and therapeutic for any sort of hip pain. So even though it's challenging for people to get that full rotation in the hips, it actually comes in really handy for opening up the hip flexors and hip joints. And we're not going to go much further than that for our first one. Really good. So we're very much